It's Create Day, my friends, so I thought I would share with you a quick tutorial on 3 different ways to do paper buttons. Welcome to my channel. Let's get started. The first ones I'm making are out of book pages, so I'm using a glue stick to glue several pages together. Once you get 3 or 4 pages together, you want to make sure that it will still fit in your hole punch. And I'm going to be using that piece of scrapbooking paper on the top there as a top cover. So I add that to it just to see if it still fits. And if there's plenty of room, then I know I can go ahead and glue down another page or 2. When I had the number of pages that I needed, I think I ended up doing 4. Then I just tear them out of the book and smooth them down. And so then I can go ahead and cut out the pieces of the scrapbook paper that I want to use for the cover of my buttons. I wanted to use 3 different types of scrapbook paper for the top of the buttons. So I'm just cutting each of these into thirds, and that way I can glue all 3 of them onto the top of those glued together book pages. So now with my glue stick, I just go ahead and paste all of these down just like I did the book pages. When the glue was dry, I just went ahead and trimmed up the edges with my scissors to remove that blank border that goes around the perimeter. I'm using a 1-inch hole punch, and you want to remove that bottom cover so that your punches don't get trapped inside. You want them to come right out onto the table. That first one I do, it wasn't in far enough. So the next one turns out just fine. And now to mark the holes. For the thread in the middle, I'm using this button that's the same size as my punches, and the holes were too small to use like a pen or a pencil to mark it, so I'm using this pointed end clay tool to just mark those little holes in there so I would know where to put my small hole punch. And I believe the one I use is like 1/8 of an inch. It's the smallest I could find. So then I just go ahead and punch those 2 holes through. You could do, depending on the size of your button and the look you want, you could do 2 holes or 4 holes. And that's how it looks. I just keep punching around the whole perimeter, and that gave me enough for what I wanted to do. But if you want to use the middle section, you just trim off all those outside circles. And here they are with all the holes punched in the middle. You can use the front side or the back book page side, whichever you like. I wanted to add some twine to mimic thread, so I wrapped some tape around the end of it so that it would easily thread through. And then I just threaded that through, hot glued the end of the string onto the button. And then I was able to just go ahead and start threading that through, just like you would if you were putting a button onto clothing with thread. I went through a couple of times, and then I just snipped off the end of this jute twine and secured it with hot glue. I repeated this process with all of my buttons. I put a coat of Mod Podge on all of them because I was going to use these on a mixed media project and I knew they would be exposed to wet paint, so I wanted them to be sealed. Next step is a little distress ink in the color called Vintage Photo, and I'm just going to take this little ink pad and brush it around the edges of all the buttons. And then I can use my little sponge applicator to put just a little bit on top. Then I decided to do a few in this different color called Antique Linen. The next set of buttons I'm making are out of cardstock and this piece of scrapbook paper. I'm just drawing a line there so I know where to cut my cardstock, and then I will fold it in half and cut it again so I have two pieces of cardstock to glue together. I glue them together with glue stick just like I did with the book pages. Then I draw a line and cut the scrapbook paper to fit onto the cardstock. It's helpful to use a little scraper to help smooth these out thoroughly and make sure you get good adhesion. While that's drying, I'm going to start my third type, which is using coffee-stained coffee filters. I'm taking some Mod Podge that I have thinned down with water, and I'm going to brush this all over the coffee filter and then attach another coffee filter and smooth that out. Then I apply another layer of Mod Podge and add the third coffee filter. I will be folding this in half, so it will be a total of 6 layers of coffee filters. So here's where I fold it in half like a taco, and then I just apply the Mod Podge to one half, fold it over, smooth it out, and let it dry. I did it this way because I wasn't making a lot of these, but if you wanted to make more, you could just do 6 to 8 full-size sheets of the coffee filters all glued together and not do the process I'm doing here with folding it in half. So now I want to add some stamps to my coffee filters. I'm just going to use bits and pieces of these stamps. These are IOD Antiquities Stamps. They are super adorable. And I'm just going to pick some ones that I think will go nicely on here. And I'm going to be using archival ink in peat moss and sepia, and then StazOn ink in jet black and timber brown. The first one I do is part of this little pig in timber brown, and it turned out really good. I love that color on the coffee filter. And then I immediately clean off my stamps with a baby wipe. And the next one I'm doing is in the color sepia. It's a rooster, and here's how that one turned out. Then I do a rose in the color peat moss, and I really like the way that one turned out too. Next is the Miss Priss Baking Powder Cat in jet black. I think she's so cute. Then I decided to do a few more in Shadow Gray and Pebble Beach. This is the medallion in the Shadow Gray. And this is the really cute dog with the top hat on in Pebble Beach. Okay, so time to punch these out, but the first one I did completely came apart inside my hole punch. The glue wasn't secure in that spot on this coffee filter. So I bet I can glue that back together. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and punch out some more pieces and show you how they look. That was the cat face. And that one, I didn't get it in far enough, so the edge is flat. You know, sometimes it's just kind of hard to know that you're in far enough. And I did notice that I had a lot of areas, especially around the edges there, where the glue wasn't secure. Like I didn't make sure it was glued well. So a lot of these didn't turn out quite right. But if you did a full 6 to 8 sheets, you could trim off all those edges and then just punch from the more middle section, and then things would be probably glued together better. So now I'm just going to trim off all those punches and get a few more out of the middle section. And now it's time to punch the cardstock ones that I did. Now for these I made a template, and I just punched out a piece of cardstock the same size as the buttons, drew an X, marked dots on either side of the middle, and then was able to just put that on top of the button, make a pencil mark on each circle, and then cut them out. Now I'm going to add a couple of different colors of the distress ink to the edges and a little bit on the fronts of these buttons. I mostly use the one called Brushed Corduroy, but I also did a few in Walnut Stain and Vintage Photo. And I actually tried Pine Needles, which is a green one. And this is one I actually did in Chipped Sapphire, which is a blue color. So now these are all done, with the exception of any threading of jute twine or whatever it is you would choose to do. We're just going to take a look at the different types. This is the one that I did with the cardstock and the scrapbook paper on top, so it's plain on the back. And this is one of the coffee filter ones, so it's coffee filter front and back. And then I will go over and show you one of the first ones I did, which was book pages and scrapbook paper. So you have the book page on the back. You could also just do just the book page, and I mean, the sky's the limit for what you want to do on these. This is how I used some on a previous mixed media project that I did. If you would like to see that video, it will be on the right hand side of your screen to click at the end of this video. But I would just like to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all the sweet, kind comments you have given me. I hope I've inspired you to go create something. See you next time.